aesthetically sold out to Yahweh than all the other Yeshuas, Tommy Dean. We get into heaven by the blood, but we get into his presence by our own voluntary sanctification. Is it possible, and I'm not going to teach you this doctrine because I don't know. Is it possible that Kepha, Yaakov, and Yochanan were in a Nazarite vow and they got a chance to come up with Yeshua because they were already separated enough to see Yeshua transformed? It's possible. I can't teach you this doctrine. It's possible. It's a possibility. Notice, and Yeshua was metamorphosized or transformed, transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun. Why not? What are they seeing? The sapphire of Yahweh. Before Yeshua came to earth, he was described as the sapphire of Yahweh. When Yeshua rose from the dead, he was described as the whiteness, the brightness, read Revelation chapter 1, the brightness of Yahweh. So they see him in his kingdom glory. They're fast-forwarded in time and space. They're fast-forwarded into the millennial Atid Lavo. And they see what Yeshua is going to look like in the millennium when he sits on David's throne, ruling and reigning from Jerusalem. He was metamorphosized. His face shone like the sun. His garments became white as the light, or as Sephirah. So they see Yeshua in his resurrection glory before he's even dead, and what they're seeing is the sapphire, the Sephirah of Yahweh, the bright manifestation of Yahweh. They're seeing the Sephirah that all Nazarites can have when they voluntarily sell out to Yahweh. And I need to ask Yahshua the question when I get to heaven. Yeah, I'm one of those weird messianics that's not going to be sleeping in the grave. You'll find me in heaven. You won't find me sleeping. Thank you. I'll get my sleep in this life. Don't argue with me either, because I'm in a very good mood today. Don't spoil it. So when I get to see Yeshua, should Yeshua tarry, I'm going to see him as a sapphire, and if at some point I go to meet him in my last days, maybe my last week, my last month, it's never too late to take a Nazarite vow. And watch this. I believe it's possible Kepha, Yaakov, and Yochanan were under a Nazarite vow. That's why they got to come up separate, because they had already, isn't that what like Yeshua does? If you already sanctify him in your heart, he'll sanctify you before men. Isn't that true? If you sanctify Yeshua in your heart first, he'll lift you up and sanctify you before men. So maybe Yeshua is lifting them up because they've already sank under a Nazarite vow. Now watch, who shows up on the Mount of Transfiguration? Moshe Rabbeinu and Eliyahu HaNavi. Now in the Sunday system, you'll hear this taught as Moses represents the law. You ever heard this? And Eliyahu represents the prophets. And then the voice came out of heaven, verse 5, saying, don't hear them, hear my son. Isn't that the way you've always heard this taught? Don't listen to the law, don't listen to the prophet, hear the son, hear my son. Isn't that the way you've heard this? Is it possible that these individuals, Yeshua, Eliyahu, and Moshe, are under a Nazarite vow? How can we say that? Did we prove last week Eliyahu ended his life under a Nazarite vow? Did we prove that last week? Eliyahu, before he was taken in a Merkavah, ended his life under a Nazarite vow? Yes. Did we know Yeshua today is under a Nazarite vow, and they saw Yeshua not as he was when he walked the earth, but they were fast-forwarded in time, and they saw Yeshua in his kingdom glory. So they saw Yeshua also under a what? Nazarite vow. So far, so good. The pictures fit. But there's only one problem. Moshe died, and we don't know that he died under a Nazarite vow, do we? Not so fast. So all these Talmidim, Yaakov, Kepha, and Yochanan, see Yeshua in the kingdom glory as a what? Nazarite, shining, bright like Sephirah. They see Eliyahu, who according to 2 Melachim Kings, chapter 1, was what? had a belt and a girdle of hair, meaning he was completely full of hair. He had not separated himself. So we agree on that. There's no ifs. You get the tape last week, you'll confirm it. So the last brother we got to take care of is who? Moises. True? Turn to your neighbor and say Moises. So we've got 3 folks, possibly, very likely, under a Nazarite vow, entering kingdom glory with the Messiah and Moshe and Eliyahu, both entering the afterlife under a Nazarite vow, all meeting in the kingdom as fellow Sephirot, or manifest. That's what it is, brothers. You don't get this. You don't get this because you're not allowing the Ruach to give it to you. Matthew 19 says, in the resurrection, we're not going to be like Jonah, and we're not going to be like Nahum, and we're not going to be like King David. We'll be like the angels. Which part of that are you struggling with? And who are the angels? They are white. They are all kind of colors, actually, but they are glowing, bright manifestations. Aren't the Malachim Sephirot? But they're the kind of Sephirot that go on and on and on. They take a licking and they keep on ticking, and they never die. They never get married. They're never given in marriage or given in divorce. They go on reflecting Yahweh's glory forever. Didn't Yeshua said of his children, you will not be in marriage or given in marriage, but in the age to come you will be like the Malachim in heaven? And what are the Malachim doing? They are constantly doing the will of the Father and being Sephirot, reflecting his glory in bright manifestation. So doesn't it make sense that everybody in the kingdom will be a Sephirah of Yahweh? There's no argument here. Yeshua, remember last week on the tree, Psalm 22, Matthew 27, he refused the wine. The Last Supper, he refused the wine. No argument that he ended his life under a Nazarite vow. There's no argument. There's also no argument that Eliyahu ended his life under a Nazarite vow. Remember last week? So now let's finally see if we can get Moshe in this picture. And why, out of all things, does Moshe and Eliyahu show up? Is it that they represent the law and the prophets? Maybe on the Peshat, but now I want to jump down to the Sod. To the deepest level of Hebraic interpretation. Go with me, we close with this. Devarim, 34, Deuteronomy 34. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Devarim 34. Now you and I have always been taught that Moshe went up to the mountain, went and then died, right? Isn't that what we've been taught? He went up and he just died. He was old and he was just tired and just time for him to die, right? Not so fast. I'm going to prove to you right now that Moshe died under a Nazarite vow. You ready? And that's why everybody on the Mount of Transfiguration was under the Nazarite vow, and they were all equally appearing before the Father and showing forth a Sephirot of Yahweh. Didn't it say they were all transformed? Isn't that what Matthew 17 says? They were all transformed? What does it mean to be transformed into brightness? Do you have another way to say being transformed into brightness? Sephirah. Being a Sephirah of Yahweh. Devarim 34. And Moshe went up. Here we go again. Went up. Notice, what did Yahweh do before he took Moshe home? He separated Moshe from Israel. How are you going to be a Nazarite? You're going to have to be separate from Israel. You're going to have to want it more than the average Israelite. Make sense? And I'm getting some holy looks. That's good. And Moshe, inquiring minds want to know. And Moshe went up from the desert plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. And Yahweh showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, and all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, the land of Yehudah, as far as the western sea. Okay, you Ephraimites, the Palestinians are on your land. Hebron, Galilee, Hebron, Okay, this is all the land of Ephraim and Manasseh. They're on your land. And you should be getting as upset about as the Jews are. They're on your land. The Negev, the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Tzor. Yahweh said to him, this is the land which I swore to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, saying to your seed I give it. I have let you look at it with your eyes, but you do not pass over there. And Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, died there in the land of Moab according to the mouth of Yahweh, or Yeshua is the mouth or the word of Yahweh. He buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, and no one knows his burial to this day. See that word place? Ain't in the Hebrew. The Hebrew reads, no one knows of his burial to this day. Now, you've heard it taught in Judaism and also in Christianity. That means Yahweh buried him, but we don't know where the grave is, right? Isn't that what you've been taught? It doesn't say that. It says, no one knows of his burial. Now, we know in verse 7 he died. That's obvious. Look at verse 7. It's obvious he died. But no one knows about his burial. I submit to you that Yahweh took him to Mount Nebo, the top of Pisgah, put him under a Nazarite vow because he's not greater than Yeshua. He's not, and he's certainly equal to Eliyahu. And if these great men died under a Nazarite vow, then, and if Moshe didn't die under a Nazarite vow, how come he showed up in Matthew 17? What gave him the right to show up in Matthew 17? Unless he was under the same sephirah or brightness, unless he was reflecting the same brightness that the others who had taken the Nazarite vow were shining on behalf of Yahweh. Wow, this is incredible stuff. In other words, Yahweh says in the Hebrew, no one, he did die. We're not disputing that. I'm not going to start teaching that Moshe was raptured. Okay? He died, but notice, no one knows his burial. That means no one knows in what manner he died. Time out. The Brit Chadashah is the first covenant revealed, and the first covenant is the Brit Chadashah concealed. I'll say that again. The Brit Chadashah is the first covenant revealed. The first covenant is the Brit Chadashah concealed. Matthew 17 tells you why no man knew what kind of burial Moshe underwent and undertook. Because he died under a Nazarite vow. In order to die under a Nazarite vow, he couldn't die among the people. He had to be separate. Isn't that what I've been telling you for 2 hours? That a Nazarite has to come apart from the people. And you know all those times you read in the evangels when Yeshua separated himself to pray, separated himself on a mountain, separated himself. All those times he got away from the Talmidim and went to be separate with the Father. I'm telling you, man, I know in my heart. Even if it was a week, can you take a Nazarite vow for a day? Sure you can. Just pay it. You got to make sure you pay. Whatever you take, whatever you vow with your mouth, you've got to be able to pay it. How do you pay it? You obey. You follow the rules. No contact with the dead, no fruit of the vine, and no razor. Amen? So if we see Moshe with Eliyahu and Yeshua, who we know died under, how many would agree Eliyahu and Yeshua both died under a Nazarite vow? How many? There's no argument. It's clear as a bell. All right? So if the only dispute is Moshe, my question to you would be those who would question if Moshe died under a Nazarite vow, why does he show up on that mountain? What right does he have to show up on that mountain? Because he was not like Enoch. He was not transformed or transfigured. He really did die. The only right he has to show up on that mountain is if he was as consecrated to Yahweh as were the others on that mountain. Father, we thank you, Abba. Father, we thank you. Father, we thank you that you challenge us to think. So that, Father, we would not accept normally – rehashed and recycled, religious traditions of our fathers, that we would work our way through those traditions to see which ones are of you and which ones are of man. And so, Father, we thank you for this two-part teaching, Nazarene nuggets, Nazarite nuggets. And Father, we give all of our ruach. I pray that if there's one or two in here that you are calling to separate themselves under a vow, that, Father, you would give them the fruits of that separation. Health, vision, wisdom, understanding, hope, encouragement. That their body would be, as it says in Echa 4:7, Lamentations 4:7, their body would be red with the healing virtue of the blood of Yahshua. Because we know that all sickness is in the blood and that these are issues of blood. And so, Abba Shabbat Shamayim, this day, we give you kol hakavod for giving us an understanding who should not enter a Nazarite vow. For Father, for showing us the true life and conduct of Rav Shaul. How Rav Shaul was just like us, an Israelite in whom there was no guile, who kept all the Torah, even coming in and out of Nazarite vows. And so, Father, we thank you for a new understanding of what was shining. Those were all manifestations of the Sephirah, of the man on the throne, Ezekiel 126, and of the pavement underneath his feet. And, Father, that we who desire to shine forth for your Shekhinah, that we would make ourselves available, Father, even if you call us into what you call many in Israel, a time of separation under a Nazarite vow. And Father, we thank you today for liberating us from the errors of religion, that we don't do those things anymore because Paul didn't and because Yeshua didn't. Father, we know that's nonsense. It's a fallacious argument. And so, Father, we thank you for building the foundation strong. Here at the Miami Beach Yisrael Revival, that the foundation of this revival, that is now in its 7th year running, is strong. And that from this table, from these cameras, the hope, the light, and the possibility of shining like Yeshua goes forth around the world. B'Shem Yeshua, Mishichenu, V'kol Kilat Yisrael, and all those who are Sifirot in the making would say, Amen, Ve.